today I'll talk to you a little bit about cheating. You know, the fact that we have so much cheating in the news, and Madoff might make it particularly appealing topic for this week. So cheating. Like everything else, I usually become interested in the problem when I see something in the outside world. And in this case, it was Enron. So Enron all of a sudden collapsed. Became very clear that there was all kind of deception going on there. And I was wondering to myself, what is going on? Is it the case that we had 3 bad apples? Or was there something more systematic? And that's actually an important question, because if there were 3 bad apples, then you just want to eliminate bad apples. But if it's something more general, maybe you need to think about a different solution. So like everything we do, I decided to do a small experiment. And the basic structure of my experiment was the following. I took a sheet of paper with 20 simple math problems. These problems gave people a set of numbers, and they had to find 2 numbers that add to 10. 2.68, 7.32. And once you found the 2 numbers that add to 10, you solved that problem. Okay, so it's a problem. Everybody can add 2 numbers to 10. It just takes you some time to figure out which of the 2 numbers add to 10. I gave people a sheet with 20 questions like this, and I said, you have 5 minutes. When the 5 minutes are over, I'll give you $1 for each question you got correctly. If you were in the experiment, you would work hard for 5 minutes. When the 5 minutes are over, you would count how many questions you solved correctly. You would give me the sheet, and I would pay you, on average, $4. That's what people solve in 5 minutes. That's the control condition. In the second condition, the cheating condition, when the 5 minutes are over, we ask people to shred the piece of paper. Put the pieces in their pocket or in their backpack and tell us how many questions they solved correctly. Now, presumably, people are not smarter just because they shred the piece of paper, but now they claim to solve 7. Now, it's not as if we had a few bad apples that skewed the distribution. Instead, we had lots of people who cheated just by a little bit. Now, why do people cheat? The economic answers to cheating is very simple. The Becker model of cheating is that every day, when we walk by anything, we consider 3 things. Let's say we walk by a gas station. We say to ourselves, how much money is in the till? What's the chance they'll catch us? How much time will we get in prison? we weigh the cost-benefit analysis, and we decide whether to hit the gas station or not. And, you know, it sounds like a crazy model, and it is. But realize that this is the model that is driving the legal system. Right? So in some sense, it's an odd model, but it's a very important model in a practical way because of the role of economics in our society. Okay, so let's check this model. How would you check that model? Well, a big part of it is how much you stand to gain. So let's manipulate that. Some people, we told them we'll pay them 10 cents per correct question. Other people, 25 cents per correct question. 50 cents, $1, $5, $2, $10. Would it matter how much money people stand to gain? You would think so. Turns out it doesn't. Still, a lot of people cheat, but they cheat just by a little bit, and they don't seem to be sensitive to how much money they stand to gain. That's strange. What about the probability of being caught? Let's manipulate that. Some people we ask to shred half the sheet, so there's still some evidence remaining. Some people shred the whole sheet. Some people shred the whole sheet, leave the room, and pay themselves from a bowl of money that has over $100, right? Just pay yourself how much you deserve. Again, you would think that people would cheat more as the probability of being detected goes down. No, they don't. Still, a lot of people cheat, but they cheat just by a little bit. So what is going on here? It doesn't seem like the economic factors are driving it. What could be driving it? So we thought maybe what's happening is that there are two conflicting forces. One force is that we all want to look at ourselves in the mirror and feel good about ourselves. We want to feel that we're honorable, honest people. At the same time, we also want to benefit from cheating. So maybe what we do is we find an equilibrium, a resting point between those 2 points. We cheat up to the level that we would still be comfortable with our image in the mirror. Call this the fudge factor, right? How little we can cheat and still feel good about it. Think about your tax returns in this regard. Now, how could you test something like this? How could you test an idea of a fudge factor? What we wanted to do was to find things that would shrink the fudge factor and expand the fudge factor. And the ideas for both of those came from two jokes. So let me tell you the first one. I'll give you the Jewish version, but the guy goes to the rabbi and he said, Rabbi, you wouldn't believe it, but last week when I was in synagogue, somebody stole my bicycle. And the rabbi said, this is terrible. Next week, when we were in synagogue and we recited the 10 Commandments, stand in front of the congregation, look back, and when we get to thou shalt not steal, see who looks down bashfully, and you know that they are the people who took your your bicycle. The guy said, fantastic idea. Next week, he sits in the front, he looks at the back, and the rabbi, anxious to know if his trick worked, catches him at the outside on the way out and said, did it work? He said, you wouldn't believe it. It worked like magic. When we got to thou shalt not commit adultery, I remembered where I left my bike. Now, where's the experiment in this? So we got people to come to the lab, and we said, we have 2 experiments for you today. We asked half the people to recall 10 books they read in high school. We asked the other half to recall the 10 Commandments. And by the way, nobody in our sample could recall the 10 Commandments, and people invented all kinds of interesting commandments. But after they tried to recall the 10 Commandments, we tempted them with cheating, the same thing, right? They shred a piece of paper, everything, no cheating whatsoever. Now, it wasn't as if the people who remembered more commandments, presumably the more religious ones, cheated less, and the people who remembered few commandments, the less religious people, cheated more. Nobody cheated after thinking about the 10 Commandments. In fact, even when we get self-declared atheists who swear on the Bible, and then we give them a chance to cheat, they don't cheat. So there's something about just thinking about morality that seemed to be shrinking the fudge factor. So we said, what about the honor code? That's something we could do at the university. We got people to come to the lab, and they sign, I understand that this server falls under the MIT honor code, and then they shred a piece of paper, no cheating whatsoever. And this is particularly interesting because MIT doesn't have an honor code. Right? So they just signed it. But this actually has an important second point, which is we also ran this experiment at Princeton. Now, Princeton has a very strong honor code. In fact, they take the students and they run them through an honesty boot camp for a week. We caught them 3 weeks after the boot camp, and we measured how much they were cheating. What do you think? Were the Princeton students cheating less than the MIT students? The people who just went through a week-long boot camp of honesty? Nothing. No effect. At the same time, when the Princeton student or the MIT students signed the honor code, nobody cheated. This is actually a very general lesson. If you think about how do we create social sustaining changes, that's very, very hard. A week-long ethical training did nothing to the Princeton student. Of course, this was not random assignment. Or you could say this, Princeton students started worse off, and this week-long training brought them back. But if we assume that it's kind of a general finding, it suggests 2 things. One, it's very hard to create a cultural change. At the same time, it's very easy to create something at the moment of temptation. So we thought, hey, that's an interesting idea. When people sign at the top, they don't cheat. We all sign the tax forms at the bottom. Why don't we reverse that? So we went to the IRS and we said, look, we found this thing. Why don't we get people to sign at the top? So the IRS said, they have better things to do, understandably. But we did find an insurance company. There was some insurance company here. Raise your hand. Don't be bashful. Okay, hey. Not you. But we found an insurance company. And it turns out that property claims are a really big deal, about $24 billion in losses from exaggerated claims. And it turns out that the people in the insurance industry think that people cheat very much like we find, that it's not that people invent burglaries, but when they have a burglary, a 35-inch television becomes 37, 2 earrings become 3, and stuff like that. So we said, why don't we get people to sign those declarations on the top? They said, this is too difficult, too complex, etc. But they said, look, we have this form where we ask people to tell us how much they drove last year. And this changes their policy. Why could you use that form? We said, sure. So it's a very simple form. It has one number. How much did you drive last year? Some people sign at the top and then fill the number. Some people fill the number and then sign at the bottom. 2,700 miles a year difference just by doing that. Now, we don't know if people did not cheat at all, but think about it. Just signing something a second before you fill the number, not you, other people, dramatically changes the level of cheating. Since then, this insurance company, who I will not name, have not implemented this trivial change to the form. Not only that, they're not willing to let us do it with the forms that really matter more. Here is a company that we're offering them basically a free lunch to reduce deception, and because of who knows what reason, they're not willing to even even try it out. So, while we talk about human irrationality, sometimes people think, oh yeah, companies are perfectly rational, just the individuals are problematic. I think it's actually the opposite. Whatever we find about individual companies are actually much worse.